Hey y'all, my name is Lindsay Tripp, and I had the privilege of joining Southern Hills on the mission trip to Guatemala. I couldn't be there in person this morning because I go to school in South Carolina, but I really wanted to share about my experience. I'm being honest when I say that just a month and a half ago, Guatemala was a country that had barely ever crossed my mind. It's embarrassing to admit, but I wouldn't have even been able to tell you with confidence if Guatemala were in Central America or South America. But I'm going to share with you my story, and it's a story of how God took a country that I knew nothing about and He used it to change my life. My story actually begins back in March, but I was completely oblivious to it at the time. But I'll begin with you guys by sharing about a Sunday morning in July when I found myself at the altar praying about careers and guidance. For the first time ever, I genuinely told God that I wanted to do His will in every aspect of my life. Specifically, I remember saying to God, God, show me where to go. An hour later, I got a message from Teddy Poor about that one of the guys on the mission trip had torn his Achilles tendon, and would I be interested in taking his place? I immediately thought about the prayer that I literally prayed an hour before, saying, God, show me where to go. And this was it. I mean, looking back, I can see so clearly how God was working to get me to Guatemala and the doors that He was opening. I don't have time to explain all of it in this video, but so many details were falling together, and they weren't coincidences. I mean, this was God. So I went to Guatemala, and mind you, all of this unraveled 8 days before we left for the trip, so I was nervous. But I felt there was a reason God wanted me there, something He wanted to reveal to me. I just didn't know what, but what I do know is that once we got there, I felt like I was on the edge of something big. I had never experienced poverty like this before. You can see it and read about it, but you can't truly grasp it until you experience it for yourself. And when we went to the village for the first time, it didn't take me long to bond with the kids, and I actually became one of the official kid distractors to keep the kids off of the construction site. But man, I had prayed for God to break my heart for what breaks His, and He sure did deliver. There's one day in particular that we were handing out shoes to the kids, and God just tore me apart. And I'm actually going to read a little bit of a journal excerpt because it does a good job of explaining what I was feeling. It says, I'm sick to my stomach, and it's not because I'm hungry, and it's not because I drink the water here. It's because I've never been so disgusted with my own wealth. It's awful. There's not a word to describe how selfish it is. I have so much stuff, and it all amounts to nothing in the end. Why have I accumulated all of it as if it means something? It's worthless. Today we took a box of shoes to the village to distribute. When it was time to pass them out, it was absolute chaos. I got caught in the middle of a crowd of yelling children, all screaming their shoe sizes to me. It was awful. Shoes, I mean, so simple, something I have upwards of 30 pairs of to myself at home. They were pushing and shoving each other, trying to get up to me. They were like animals on a carcass. And it's nothing they can help. It's our instinct to fight for ourselves, and it's our instinct to be selfish so we can survive. But unlike in America, where we fight to see who can get the nicest car or the biggest house, these kids are simply fighting for one pair of shoes. How did this happen? Why have I been given so much? There's got to be something more I can do. My heart is broken right now. My presence here and loving on these kids is great, but I need to do more. I just don't know what, and I don't know how. That night, the mission team actually gathered for devotionals, and I shared that journal excerpt with them. And afterwards, a friend whom I made on this trip, but will keep anonymous for this story, approached me, and I was absolutely blown away. This friend told me that if I felt that it was God's will, that they would pay for me to come back to Guatemala for a year or however long I see fit. They would take care of the expenses of food, lodging, even airfare so that I can come back and serve. How do you respond to that? I mean, I went up to the rooftop of Mimi's house to think things through, and so many thoughts were rushing through my mind. I mean, my gut answer to coming back to Guatemala for an extended period of time was just no. I mean, I felt like I had so many doubts. I mean, why would God choose me? I felt so inadequate. And I shared all of this with God in prayer, and He answered. I actually have been reading A Purpose-Driven Life, and right after I'd been praying, I opened up that book, and this is what I read. It says, "What will you live for? Living the rest of your life for the glory of God will require a change in your priorities, your schedule, your relationships, and everything else. It sometimes means choosing a difficult path instead of an easy one. Will you live for your own goals, comfort, and pleasure, or will you live the rest of your life for God's glory? You may hesitate, wondering whether you'll have the strength to live for God, but don't worry. God will give you what you need if you'll just make the choice to live for Him. What will you live for?" Y'all, I still don't know what to make of all of this. I mean, it's still so fresh, but while I don't have to understand it, I do have to trust and obey. Surrendering to God means giving up your comfort, understanding, priorities. My whole life, I've been swimming upstream, just trying to do careers that I wanted for myself, or trying to do things that make me happy, or things that would fulfill me. But what I learned in Guatemala is that it's not about me. I mean, James reminds us in the Bible that this life is a mist, that it's here and then it's gone. And when you start to think about things in terms of eternity, how could you want to do anything but live for God? I mean, that doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable. If I'm being honest, I was relieved to get back from Guatemala after 1 week, simply because I wanted to run away from what God was calling me to. I pulled a Jonah. But then I stopped back and I thought, isn't it beautiful that God would call me to something I'm not comfortable with? Because He knows that I'll have to rely on Him for strength and courage, and that actually following through with this will require so much trust in Him and ultimately bring me closer to Him. I mean, what an awesome God we serve. And I don't know many of y'all. I definitely don't know what God's calling you to. I mean, I can't even figure that out for myself. But I do know that whether it's in your job, your church, home, school, God's calling you to surrender to Him, to fully give up yourself so that He can use you for His purposes. Trust and obey, because our God is so faithful. And when you surrender to Him, He'll show you the way. I want to say thank you to Southern Hills for being on mission for Christ and for allowing me to join in. Thanks.